I don't know. I haven't heard. Okay, good evening and welcome to the June 25th meeting of the Radnor Township Environmental Advisory Council. We will start our agenda as we typically do with review and approval of the minutes. The copy of the minutes has been distributed for review. Does anybody have any corrections or comments, changes, anything? I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Thank you. Next item is announcements. I have been announcing the yard waste drop-off, which, again, I'll do tonight, but I'm thinking that perhaps we've been doing it every night, and if people are interested in yard waste drop-off from here on out, they can check the website. It is posted there. So if anybody is interested in yard waste, always go directly to the Radnor Township website, and if you go under, I think it's called Residents section, you'll see it there. But I will announce the next one is at Skunk Hollow on Friday, July 17th from 8 till 3. And again, the website has all of the information about how you need to package and or bundle your yard waste for drop-off. Does anybody else have any other announcements? No? Okay, very good. So then let's move into our work group reports and discussion. And the first work group up is the climate protection work group. Josh, do you have a report on how we're coming along with the inventory and report?
I do. I have a very rough draft report completed,
Great.
or shall we say, portion of the rough draft.
Okay.
Completed.
Then I'll change my great to good.
Good.
Good work. Let's keep it up.
So by certainly by the next meeting, the rough draft will be completed. But
Okay.
it is shaping up, and we have a pretty good feel about what it's going to contain, and most of the data is there, and it's just waiting for a little bit more time to put it together. But 1 month should be adequate.
Okay, very good. And then we'll circulate it to the group for review and any comment, and then get it finished up by the end of the summer, I would imagine, so that we can then move on to next steps.
I agree. Yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you. The rain garden project is next up. Anne, do you have a report on that?
Yes, the rain garden is on the township schedule. They're going to be doing it over sometime in the next few months. They're always revising their schedule, and the weather has not been particularly helpful. It would have been nice if we'd gotten it in before we got all that rain. And right now we're planning a simple rain garden project. It will be planted, it'll be dug out, sodded or grass seeded, and planted with a small number of trees. And then we'll be looking forward for next summer to try to plant it more completely. But we thought the initial message that really you could do a very simple rain garden simply with creating a basin for the water with grass in it is a very effective way of dealing with some stormwater runoff. So that's what's happening.
And is there any funding issues right now, or is it self-financing?
Right now, the township is going to cover it. I think when looking forward to additional planting, I think that will have to be funded. So we talked to some outside sources, and I think we have some possibilities.
Great.
Okay, very good. Thank you. The next item is comprehensive stormwater program, and I'm responsible for that one. We don't have anything new to report at this time. The last meeting of the stormwater focus group was back in the springtime, and they were thinking of trying to organize another meeting, but it hasn't happened yet. So I suspect with everything that's going on at the township, that's probably on lower priority right now, but I suspect we'll get it going again maybe in the fall. Okay. Then the next work group report is the combination now of the environmental ordinances and green building work group. We decided last time to combine those two since there's just seemed to be a lot of overlap, and Sloan and I were working on the same issues, so it makes sense to combine.
Exactly, and we spent the last month's work group call mostly on some grant ideas, not specifically on this project. So we rescheduled the working group to July 1st, and we're going to just continue where we left off, which is really focusing on the green points type approach that Doylestown has a framework for residents to get points toward reductions of permit fees. So we'll have a meeting in a week or so, and we'll report it the next months.
Very good. Next item is the Community Environmental Education Awareness Work Group, which Heather leads, and Heather Riley is not here tonight. But her primary project is the website, having a sort of a Radnor green icon on the website where you can click on that and you can reach all things green, whether it be recycling, waste disposal, composting, all of these things that we've been focusing on. And so she's working on that. I think the goal is to try to get that up and running by this fall. So that's where that is. And then the final item on the work group reports is the sustainability series. And as you know, we've had 2 programs already, one on green building, one on alternative energy. And we have a planning meeting next week to start organizing the 3rd program in the series. And this should be on greening your own home. There were a lot of folks that were really interested in what they can do at home, and so we want to have a program on that. And Josh, you had suggested that we make sure funding is incorporated in there, and so I have a note on that to make sure we discuss that next week at the planning meeting. So thank you for that. Okay. The next item on the agenda, and we just added this as a regular agenda item, is liaison reports, so that our 2 EAC members who are liaison to Planning Commission and the Board of Health have an opportunity to report on anything that may be relevant or, you know, of cross-cutting interest to both groups. So, Herb, do you have anything that you'd like to report on?
Sure. One of the things that would be of interest to this group, and certainly to our citizens, as was reported by Dr. Len Donato, who is a veterinarian and sits on the Board of Health. There's been a significant die-off of bats in the area. Apparently the bats are succumbing to a disease that they get called white nose syndrome, which is apparently caused by a fungus. What that causes the bats to do is to emerge from their hibernation way too early in the winter when there is no food source for them. And so they die of hunger. And what that, besides the death toll among the bat population, what that means is, since each bat consumes about a ton of insects a year, it means we will see a lot more insects over the next couple of years than would normally be the case, which could have significant environmental and health impacts in the area. Obviously.
I'm sorry. Could I ask a question on that? Is there any effort to combat that or to replenish the bat population? Is there anything at the...
I'm not sure how we could combat that. Treating the bats in their caves when they're in hibernation would probably be counterproductive, but I will ask Dr. Donato that question. It seems to me to be a very difficult thing to do. But that fact, with the increase in the insect population, which would have happened anyway with the rainfall that we've had, again compounds the problem we'll see with, especially with mosquitoes and the increased probability of things like West Nile encephalitis. So I think we have to say to the citizens of our township and that they need to pay attention to any standing water on their properties, bird baths and lids of trash cans or inside trash cans or wherever there may be water standing as a result of the rain needs to be dumped into the soil so that it doesn't serve as a breeding place for more mosquitoes. Any other questions before I leave that?
May I ask a question? If you have a bird bath, I mean, it's nice to have the bird bath for the animals. If you dump it out every other day and then refill it, is that okay? Or does it have to be dumped out daily, or does it have to be just not, can it just not work with water in it at all?
Well, I think if you dump it out regularly, that'll probably help a lot. I dump mine daily when it's rained heavily, so that, I mean, mosquitoes can lay their eggs and breed in a very small quantity of water. So it can quickly become a significant problem.
And do you know how long that cycle takes?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Another issue, are there any other questions on that one? Another issue, we had some testimony from a citizen at the previous Board of Health meeting, and I don't know if those of you who use the Radnor Trail towards the west end, behind where the Bank of America is and McDonald's, there's been a colony of feral cats living in that area, and the problem was compounded by some individuals who were apparently setting up shelters for them, including water sources, a water cooler for pets, and so that just helped them along. Problem with the feral cats is that they are breeding, and we've been able to get whoever was supplying the water and food and shelter for the cats misguidedly to stop doing that, but all of the cats haven't been rounded up yet. And of course, they're likely to be eating their way through the small mammal population in the area, so we hope to be able to gather them all in at some point, but that again is a difficult problem. Any questions about that one?
Difficult problem in terms of catching them, or issues with people that have different feelings about whether they should be caught or not?
I think there's a little bit of both. I think at this point I can say that we've apparently, as I indicated, resolved the problem of people misguidedly providing them with nourishment and water and shelter, but catching them is another problem. They're fairly elusive.
Okay.
I walk my dog on the trail every morning, and the other day I saw 3 of them. So, but hopefully over time we'll be able to get them all in. Any other questions on that? I've been asked a lot about the novel H1N1 virus, or the virus that causes what we call swine flu. There have been continuing cases across the country, as everyone knows, in Pennsylvania. We've had situations within the Radnor School District which have been reported to by the superintendent, and who's done a great job of keeping us all up to date. Number of children in one of our elementary schools went home ill one day with flu-like symptoms. We have no confirmation yet on whether or not that was actually swine flu or not. But the closing of school with the end of the school year will do a lot to interrupt the cycle of transmission in that respect. And that's my report.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Julia, do you have anything that you'd like to report? Planning?
The only thing I wanted to mention is something that will actually be coming up perhaps next month, that I think would be of interest to this group, is that, as you know, there's a proposal ongoing to rezone the Garrett Hill district, and they're working very hard on that. That has come before the Planning Commission, and along with that, the topic of rezoning some of the open space in town has come up. Coming out of the work that the Garrett Hill group has done, the Garrett Hill Coalition, the thought was that by rezoning the 2 parks in their region, they could help to conserve them moving forward and make sure that they stay permanently as open space. One of those properties is owned by the township and the other by the school district. But they're zoned, well, I won't go into the details of the zoning right now, but the Planning Commission, after looking at that, is coming to this project with the idea that if we're going to be doing rezoning to those two properties, those two parks in the Garrett Hill area, we really need to look at all the municipal-owned open space and to make sure that we're using zoning that will preserve those spaces as parks and as open space moving forward as best we can. So that will be coming up in the next few months. Probably we're going to be having some more meetings about that, and I think that we just need to keep an eye on it.
Okay, absolutely. That sounds like something that we'd like to hear more about and you know, provide any counsel or guidance that we can offer. Great, thank you. Okay, we're just moving right through tonight. This is great. The next topic is old business. Does anyone have any old business other than what we've discussed that they want to report on? Okay, then we'll move on to new business. And there's, I had circulated this by email to the members of the EAC, and we sort of had some preliminary comments, and we'll just take it up here. I received a letter from Mr. Gary Cutler proposing that the EAC consider a proposal that he has that Radnor Township begin recycling waste vegetable oil from bars, restaurants, and other food service businesses within the township. He's saying that the waste oil could be collected, filtered, and used to fuel township vehicles such as garbage trucks, road construction trucks, etc. And so his proposal seems to be to compel local businesses to participate in an oil recycling project, and that the township would then get this oil and use this oil, convert existing vehicles over to use of biodiesel. And so he's suggesting that, I guess, we make a recommendation to the township, to the commissioners on that. I guess my initial thought was that I'm fairly reluctant to suggest imposing new programs on our business owners or even, quite frankly, on the township staff unless we can, you know, see some great value in it. I would be more in favor of, you know, a voluntary program if it makes sense. And I think I had mentioned in my email when I circulated this that there's a group downtown called, it used to be Philadelphia Fryodiesel, and then they changed their name, I think, to Black Gold, where they developed some technology for taking brown grease out of grease traps and converting that to be used as biodiesel. And the reason that they were focusing on that, evidently, was because the fryer grease is so valuable and there's already market for it, and it's already sort of being collected and used in various applications, either for biofuels or in, I think it had to do with like animal feed and things like that. So it seems like there's a market already for it, and given that it might make sense to, you know, pursue having the market come out to the suburbs if it's just in the city, rather than imposing a program, you know, on our township businesses, especially in this time when it's difficult, you know, if they can sell it to somebody and make money versus say you've got to give it to the township. But that's just my initial thoughts, and I wanted to open it up to comments. And Sloan, I know you had used biodiesel, you converted your car.
I have.
Maybe you want to share some thoughts on that.
I would. I had a good experience with biodiesel. I converted a car to run on biodiesel a couple of years ago, and the performance was fine. We took some long trips, went to Washington D.C. all on vegetable oil, and it was terrific. It ran very smoothly. The issues we had with it were really logistical issues. We had some difficulty locating a reliable source of vegetable oil that had been processed for use in as a fuel. The closest supply we could find, reliable supply, was in near the city of Chester. And it wasn't too hard to get, but it was in drive down to Chester and load up some cans with vegetable oil and bring it back and keep it in the garage. And the issue is that it doesn't last forever. It goes bad in a few months, about 6 months. So you can't stock up for a year and make only one trip. The other issue is that there are some issues with the long-term impact on engines, and some manufacturers will void a warranty if you use it. Now, my car was out of warranty, so that wasn't an issue. But I think for the township, if it was using it in newer vehicles, that could be an issue. I think it's a terrific thing to do. I highly encourage people to try it. I tend to agree with your perspective that this is the kind of experiment that is really best done on a voluntary basis for people who want to and want to devote the time to it, rather than saying you have to do it. What I thought was very interesting in Mr. Cutler's letter, and probably a good idea, would be to encourage the local businesses, restaurants, to first of all, to recognize they have a valuable resource in waste vegetable oil. Many of them probably do already. I know more and more there are collection services. You mentioned one of the bigger ones locally, the former Fryo Diesel Company. But there are some others. Any restaurant that doesn't know about it would be well advised to find out, because there is a burgeoning market, and it's a real asset for those businesses. And I know that the school district has taken steps to convert at least some of the buses to run on biodiesel. So maybe there would be an interesting project in terms of, on a voluntary basis, linking those two, or at least making sure that all the restaurants understand that they have a valuable resource, and so that would be my view of the right way to go.
Perhaps we can get him in contact with the Wayne Business Association
Right, that
to
would be
make
a good
sure,
idea.
maybe do an educational
Right.
program or something.
And
like
maybe
that.
just to have him or the business do a survey of some, of those businesses to make sure they understand it. Maybe they're already doing some of this. I came to realize that a lot of restaurants know about it, as they should, and rather than paying people to take away the vegetable oil, are actually receiving some revenues for it, at least at the time when fuel prices are high. I know we've had some discussions about what happens with recyclables when the price goes down. I know the fuel prices are lower than they were last year, but they're on their way back up. So I would recommend a voluntary program of education and outreach to the restaurants, perhaps with an eye to seeing if there couldn't be a link to the school district use. And it may be that there's a school project in terms of maybe converting some of the local vegetable oil to fuel to be used in the buses. It's not terribly complicated to do, but there is some equipment involved, and since it'd be used in school buses, we'd want to make sure it's done right.
Right. Very good. Does anybody else have?
What was your
comments?
experience with your vehicle in terms of the price of the oil, miles per gallon?
In terms of price, it was competitive with regular diesel fuel. In fact, I was very happy last summer when I was able to, when I found the supply in Chester, and it was about 50 cents a gallon less than I paid for regular diesel. The car was able to run on either diesel or biodiesel. So I found that it was actually, it didn't vary exactly with the price of diesel, but it was highly correlated, and it tended to be around the price of diesel or a little bit lower. And in terms of miles per gallon, I found it was, again, about the same. They say you lose about 10% of miles per gallon, but my experience was that it was you know, I wasn't tracking it that precisely, so
But it was
I
close.
found it was roughly equivalent, and as a diesel, the car got great mileage anyway. So it was very very efficient. So
Well, I would concur with the notion of a voluntary program. I know from the experience of the Board of Health for years, we went back and forth with regard to a ban on smoking in eating establishments in Radnor Township. And there were there was one major issue with regard to that, and that was that the township, in fact, does not have the legal status to impose such a ban, and I don't know whether we would have the legal status to compel businesses in our township to recycle their vegetable oils in the way we've been describing here. But then we hit upon the notion of a voluntary program in which restaurants and other places like that would, if they voluntarily imposed a ban on smoking within their own establishments, would receive a certificate signed by the president of the Township Commissioners and the president of the Board of Health that they could display. And by the time the state imposed a ban on smoking statewide, which we now have, I guess it was almost a year ago now, we had upwards of 90% of the eating establishments in the township had voluntarily imposed their own ban. And what they found was it simply paid them to do that. And so anything along the lines that we've been talking about tonight, if it's presented in a way that the eating establishments could, if they don't already know it, could see that they could actually realize some additional revenue from this. The other thing I would really, as I wrote to the other, was that via email, was that I would like seriously to know what other townships, particularly in Pennsylvania, if there are any that are doing anything along these lines, and how they do that. Because when the EAC recommends something to the township commissioners, we should be prepared with some data on that, so that you have a forceful presentation to them. Because ultimately, as you know, it's their call.
Right, right. And I agree, it would be good to find out what other townships are doing if we were going to pursue a recommendation on that. But it sounds like perhaps we're going to go the route of seeing if maybe we can hook them up with the Wayne Business Association, see if perhaps the restaurant owners are aware of it and aware of the market that's available, and pursue it that way, if that makes sense to everyone here. Okay, all right. And I guess the other topic too is, the other end of his recommendation had to do with the township fleet and the township vehicles, which, in terms of thinking about what the township vehicles ought to be like, and should they be hybrid or should they be using some kind of biofuel, that may be a completely separate issue for recommendations on what ought to be happening as township vehicles are replaced, and what kind of vehicles we would recommend moving to. And there's lots of opportunities now with grant funding and stimulus funds. And I know Josh has been talking to township staff about some grant opportunities, looking at some of the efficiency block grant funding opportunities and things like that. So I wasn't sure if everybody on the EAC was aware of that, but he is having some conversations with Dan Malloy, and I had conveyed to you that Matt Bauman had also identified some, potential opportunities, and so we're following up on that. I don't know if there's anything to report at this point. It sounded like it's in pretty early stages.
There's really not much to report at this time, other than to confirm what you said. There are grants that are currently available to local government, and there are grants that we anticipate are going to open soon for local governments to pursue energy efficiency projects, to pursue greenhouse gas reduction projects. So it's my hope, and I'm going to work with Sloan and, as you said, Matt Bauman and Dan Malloy to make sure that Radnor is prepared to take advantage of this funding that's going to become available if it makes sense. And I hope to have a meeting with Matt Bauman shortly to at least breach the subject with him, and hopefully by next meeting we'll have some idea of maybe a potential project that would fit the grant well, and maybe be able to present some cost-benefit analysis to the EAC about that.
Okay, great, thank you. Does anyone have anything else? No? Then I think we're all set in record time. So that will close things up. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.